Stop watching manifestation content and do this instead. Now, this worked for me in 24 hours. It might work for you in even less time. So, high flyers, you might be sitting around watching old Neville Goddard videos ad nauseum, or you might be watching Bob Proctor videos. And look, they're all good. There's a lot of great creators, but I'm going to share with you something that worked for me, and it worked in 24 hours or less at a time in my life when I was in a crisis state. Absolutely needed help. I needed a breakthrough. I needed something to manifest for me, or I was going to be out on the streets. Look, I understand, high flyers. We all have resistance in our life. We all have challenges with resistance, but resistance can be put into our life to teach us something that we wouldn't learn otherwise. Had I not been put into this place, this predicament years ago, I wouldn't have learned what I learned, and I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. I mean, seriously, this works so fast for me. In 24 hours, I got everything I needed, everything I wanted at the time. And as I said, the reason is that I was going through a tremendous amount of resistance. I felt like the walls were caving in on me, and the resistance, it just felt overwhelming to me at that particular time in my life. It was huge. I was a day away from being homeless, from being thrown out of a cheap flea bag hotel room and put on the streets. What I discovered in that moment of despair is that the key is to ask questions, the right question. And I found the right question. And this question unlocked the entire creative power of the universe and got me what I wanted in 24 hours. I think it can do it for you in even less time. This technique is powerful. You can use it in any area of your life, and it really works. And it's all based around you asking yourself the right question. Okay, so let me set the table. I was living in a hotel room in Portland, Oregon. It was one of those hotel rooms where you pay weekly. And so I was paying weekly, and tomorrow was rent day, and I didn't have any money. I wasn't working. I was doing a few little business deals. I mean, miniature business deals here and there to just keep me afloat. I was also borrowing money. I'm going to be honest with you. I was borrowing money, $50 at a time, just to have enough money to pay my rent and to buy a little bit of food to live on. Everything was going wrong. Panic set in. And I just said, I can't take it anymore. And so I went for a walk, and I was taking a long walk, and I started to remember something. Something came into my mind that I had learned years earlier. It opened me up to a higher level of consciousness, to a different belief. So before I tell you the question I asked myself and the statement that opened me up to a higher level of consciousness and literally saved my life, as I like to say, saved my ass. Before I do that, I want to say this. I was feeling worse and worse and more destitute and more desperate every single moment, because I was asking myself over and over and over again in my mind, how was I going to feel? How was I going to feel if I ended up homeless? If I was in a walkway or under a tree somewhere or under a park bench, how was I going to feel? And that picture and those feelings kept resonating in my mind, making it worse. Remember, we attract what we are, not what we want. I was attracting homelessness because I was fearing it. That was the question I was asking myself over and over and over again. How was I going to feel? Then I remembered what Napoleon Hill said, and it just resonated in me. What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. High flyers, you don't know how much I held on to those words. Whatever the mind of man. Whatever I can conceive and believe, I have the power to achieve. And so do you. And so do you. In that moment, I made a mental shift. On that walk, on that night, I asked myself a different question. And I've been asking myself a different question ever since. I asked myself this question: how will I feel when the money that I need comes through and I'm able to pay my rent? Well, high flyers, I had till noon the next morning. And at about 11 o'clock the next day, I received a phone call from someone out of the blue who knew my plight, who said, Robert, I'm going to loan you $500. And I will always be grateful to this person who loaned me that $500. With that money, plus another $200 that came in unexpectedly, with about $700, I was able to move out of the hotel and move in to a nice little room in someone's house. I know how I felt. I felt relieved. I felt wonderful. I felt happy. I felt excited. I felt successful. I felt all those feelings the night before when I asked myself, how will I feel when I have the money to pay my rent? And I felt them the next day. I don't even think it was 24 hours. Well, a short time later, I asked myself, how will I feel when I've saved up enough money to move into my own apartment? And I moved into my own apartment, and it had a fireplace like I visualized. It had hardwood floors. It was very nice. It was small. It was very small, but it was very nice. And then I lived in my apartment for a period of time, and I got to know Rachel. And then I asked myself another question: how will I feel when Rachel and I are in love and we're together? I knew how good I would feel. There was no doubt in my mind, and it manifested. Not in 24 hours, but it did manifest. And then later on, I asked myself, how will I feel when I take the keys to my new home? Now, look, you can ask yourself questions about how you're going to feel if things go wrong. That's easy. Pretty much everybody in the world does that. Or you can start asking yourself questions. How will you feel if things go right? How will you feel if you attract your specific person? How will you feel when you get married? How will you feel when you open up your new business? How will you feel when you make your first $1 million? How will you feel when you buy your new home? How will you feel when you get accepted into Harvard? How will you feel when you are finally healthy, strong, and vital? How will you feel? Focus on that. Keep that feeling like a treasure, and focus on it. Focus on it, high flyers, morning, noon, and night. The positive feeling of receiving what you desire. And you'll receive it. 24 hours or less. I think less with you. I was in a pretty bad state. But one question turned it around for me. And I believe it can turn it around for you as well. Here's some other videos to help you on your journey.